Hi everybody, my name is Robert Marshall, the founder of I Am Man Inc. and also the author of Believe Like a Man. I'm so excited because there will be a series of interviews and conversations we'll be having from men from different walks of life, from different spaces, and I'm excited because they are all going to be joining me, sitting on this furniture, sitting in this room, sitting in this conversation to talk about their own journeys to wholeness. One of my amazing friends once told me that men are not born, men are made. Men are made through pressure, through challenges, through life circumstances, but also men are forged through the challenges of life by making inner negotiations with themselves about who they want to be, how they're going to show up in the world. How I define myself as a man cannot be determined by my socioeconomic class or my surroundings, but it must be defined by my inner convictions, who I decide to be, how I partner with the divine to come up with agreements to decide this is who I'm going to be and this is how I'm going to show up in the world. But the amazing thing about manhood, it is a journey. And part of this journey is that you cannot do it by yourself. I know this is what people want us to believe, but manhood has to be forged by other men and by community. And so I'm excited to have some of my closest friends, brothers, mentors, who are going to be joining me in this series to talk about what it means to really believe like a man. So I'm gonna introduce you guys to some of my friends, my brothers that are here with me today. Listen, I wanna introduce you guys. Thank you, Jason, so much for coming. Hey, thank you so much. We got E over here, thank you. And we got the on and only Kelvin Easter with us, hey, AKA Uncle Kev. So listen, he's here with us today, they're here today, and they have all made some major contributions to my journey one way or another, but they are all doing their own thing. They're leaders in their own right, and we have the honor to sit here and talk with them. There's like almost 80 years of manhood experience sitting here in this room, probably a little bit more. I'm not one for math, so don't do that. But anyway, so man, brothers, thank y'all so much for being with us. How are you?
Good, man.
Good.
Amazing. Amazing. Great.
Good. Man, one of the things that I've learned about manhood is that the definition, like, it changes all the time. Depending upon who you talk to, where, you know, socioeconomic class. If you talk, like some women would say, you know, a man got to do this. Most men have broken definitions of what it means to be a man. And I'm just curious because, you know, you all are at different spaces. How have you defined what manhood is?
I don't mind starting. I believe that I agree with you that our definitions of manhood are broken. I believe that we have a lot of different ones, but I think most of them are broken. I really kind of simplified it for me. It has to do with, manhood has to do with, are you willing to take responsibility for the choices you've made, the decisions you've made, and the actions you've taken? To me, that's when you start to really get into, I'm a man.
I would say, for me, when you think about anything, right, you always want to go to the manufacturer. So when I talk about what a man is, I think you have to start with the divine, right? He created us so we can be creative. And so when I think from that lens and I think about what a man is, I think about even Adam and how, you know, he named everything that was here, right? And so he went through that naming process to name the animals, and he created that order, was placed in the garden, had his work, was all together, and then Eve came. And so just being a foundation, I think that's what it really is. But the divine is that anchor. And I'll drop it right there.
I rocks with that.
Oh yeah, that's good.
That's your language. That's your language right there.
Well, you know, when you talk about manhood, I think one of the most important things to recognize is that we're in a journey of discovery. I don't know if there's ever a place of arrival.
Listen, Uncle's already dropping these bombs, man. Like,
You're on a journey, and in that journey you discover as you go. But it starts with excavating the divine.
Right.
Who created me and for what purpose? And so
Right.
for me, it all starts at the book of Genesis and in the new beginnings.
Now you use the word excavating. What does that mean? Am I digging? What am I doing?
Yeah, man, but you're searching. You know, there's knowledge and wisdom all around us, and we need to be lifelong students to dig and discover. And I think the error we make is in assuming that we know. So pride becomes our biggest hindrance to discover.
Well, don't you think, like, in the time that we live in now, like, pride has been like, it's the essence of what a real man is. Like, I'm never wrong. I'm strong. I'm the biggest. I'm the best, right? And we show up as that because it's what it means, or what I think when I look at social media, and I'm looking at, like, people defining manhood. It's like, manhood, you got to have the biggest house, the biggest car, you got to be the best in sex, you got to be the best in all the spaces, like, and it's almost like there's no room for any range of emotions at all.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that often when I'm talking, I was talking to some young people last week about this. Remember when you were in grade school, you got the box of 8 crayons?
Yeah, I remember that.
And then remember somebody else came in with the box of 64?
Dude, I remember.
Right.
It had the little sharpener in the back, the sharpener in the back.
And I think that is the way we've allowed social media and just our culture to define us,
Right.
especially when it comes to emotional wellness. We got 8 crayons, we got 8 emotions. And we need to be able to expand that emotionalness, that emotional box of crayons, as it were. And I think that that's part of the discovery, is that humility, but also the vulnerability that's necessary to say, yeah, I can cry. Yeah, I'm hurting. I'm embarrassed. All of those things, all of that is a part, I think, of the discovery of what it means to be a man. I can be strong, but I can also cry.
See, I think that sounds really good, and I agree. I think some of the challenges that I see as I talk with people and as I'm living my own life, right? We say that in theory, but for most men, showing any range of emotion, it's like a dog-eat-dog world. Like,
100%.
Like, it's like, if I show this, not only am I going to be taken advantage of, looked at as I'm weak, but also if we travel back, right, most men are emotionally underdeveloped. You know, it goes back to being a young boy. You fall off a bike, and you know your dad, your uncle, or your mom or your grandma says, "Hey, boy, get off there. Don't cry." Right? Versus if it was a girl, right? She might receive a little bit more care, a little support.
100%.
But what it does is it dwarfs boys, and it locks them in those spaces. And boys and men are never given the freedom to express the range of God-given emotions. And so the only thing they can express is anger and sexual prowess. Like, so how do we navigate that?
I would say, so I don't know if anybody's ever familiar with the book Ego is the Enemy by Ryan. It's a powerful book. When you talk about pride, I think about ego.
What's the name of the book?
Ego is the enemy.
Okay.
People seek external validation for internal needs. And so the world that we live in, talking about social media, the world that we live in, and when you look at this huge, spectrum that we live in and that we are in and that we exist in, it's difficult to not want to keep up with. It's difficult to not want to be like. It's difficult to not want to. But it's also simple when you understand that you're set aside and you seek internal validation. There's another phrase in that book: the enemy is the inner me, right? And so when you look inside of you and you kind of give yourself the opportunity to forgive yourself, you give yourself the opportunity to go back to those moments as a boy and say, that wasn't right that happened to me. That wasn't right that my mother made me think that way, my father made me think that way, or the absence of made me think that way, looking at other people made me think that way. And now I can start to write that story myself. Now I can have my own perspective myself, and I push out the external points, and I'm no longer seeking validation from things outside of me, but I begin to look inside. And I think that is what begins to kind of move that mountain on the inside of you to not worry and not be free, right? Because we need freedom, we need liberty. right? And so I ain't finna go there. 'Cause
No,
go there,
listen, bro.
but I'll drop it.
Man, I have a question for you. You know, when I think about my personal definition of manhood is being committed to the process of becoming.
Yeah.
Right? That's how I've defined it. And it's been hard. It is challenging, or one of my challenges in my journey to becoming who I am and who I will be, having a blueprint of what it really means to show up as a man, as a true, my true authentic self.
Right.
Number one, I never had a father to tell me, like, hey, like, this is who you are. Be proud of who you are. I learned that, you know, growing up, I never had, you know, the affection, the touch, the healthy touch of a father to provide levels of safety, levels of peace. And so what brewed inside was a little boy that was anxious, that always felt like he was in trouble, always was seeking the approval of other people to tell me, hey, you're worth loving. And so how, you know, now that I have 3 kids, a wife, 2 dogs, and we might even get a cat, right? How in the world do I show up and be what I've never seen before?
Yeah. Well, you know, I always talk about the levels in life where we are in a situation. For example, I'll just say it this way. Coming into manhood often is like having not played football, the Pee Wee League, the youth league, the high school league, and then the college league, and then you now in the NFL, right? And you're trying to learn how to block. You're trying to block at the first time with big dogs. You know, and life is that way, right? So the thing is that the modeling process is broken. And if you go back to the generations, you'll find that men were taught do not show emotions. Then if you go back far enough, you find that military men learned how to be strategic but not engaging. So like my father, I had a solid father, but he was not emotionally connected with me and my brother until later on, right? And so what has to happen is that somewhere down the road, there has to be a community of men where that can be broken up and shaped again. And then you're allowed to be in this safe environment, being vulnerable. But the truth of the matter is, I mean, you know, I've had my bruises, and I've been in pain often on this journey, and still in pain, right? Even at this point, right? It's not that I have, I've learned to manage. Not cope all the time, but I've learned to manage the pain. Now I've learned how to be distinctive of, okay, this is me, but this is who God made me. This is what's going on with me. And that little bridge in between, there's grace and love that helps me to process so I'm not killing myself in judgment.
I think it's that bridge. It's always that bridge between, and I think it's the reconcile between who I believe God has called me to be and who I actually am. And it's like, how do we reconcile that? How do we reconcile that?
Loaded.
It's
loaded.
Y'all the sages. Come on, man. I'm asking y'all how do we, because you know, E and I, we're a little bit younger, you know, y'all a little bit more seasoned, right? And I think some days I wake up, I want to blow it all up. You know, and I think for me, you know, my father, I never knew him. You know, I wasn't told the truth for a long time about who my father was. So I grew up thinking my father was a deceased man. And at 25 years old, I found out he was alive. And he knew I existed. And then my mother knew he existed. I didn't know he existed. And so at 25, when I find out, hey, he's alive, like, yo, like, we're gonna have this huge reunion. And then to have a conversation with him, and he still doesn't want any relationship with me because he's married. And so he doesn't want his wife to know that he had a baby out of wedlock by somebody else ages ago. And this is just, you know, my story, but there are a boatload, there are a sea of men who are mourning the loss of a father that may not be there, you know, because he's gone on, or a father has chosen not to be there, and he still has to contend with that pain every day. How does he begin to heal?
Yeah. Oh man.
This is
So
good.
let me give you a little bit of my story.
Okay.
My mother's first husband was killed, trying to kill her and my brother. Left her with 6 kids under the age of 9.
Wow.
Somebody came along to look in on her, and they looked at it a little bit too closely. Oops, comes Jason. I didn't know who my father was until I was 16, because she hid it. When I found out who he was, because of who he was, I couldn't tell anybody. So I hid it for the next 34 years. I was 50 before I started telling the truth about my father. To add to that, I just found out last summer that the man who I thought was my brother was actually my father. Okay? So what I'm saying is that I've been through all of those pathways of pain, of learning, and what did I do?
This some
I-
tea. Let me. Ooh.
I had to learn how
I wasn't ready.
to heal from that. I had to learn how to deal with that in terms of my identity.
But how? Because
I think part of it for me, I began to write and journal and think through it. Part of it is relationship. Part of it is being in that community.
Yeah.
That Kelvin was talking about, being around other men who could model for me what it meant to be a father, what it meant to be a man, but also talking through that. We talked about the spiritual aspect of it. I learned very early in my life that I had a responsibility to be a man for somebody else.
Right.
When I was 16, my nephew looked up at me, and I recognized this. I did not have a choice of whether or not he would follow me. The only choice I had was the example that I would give him to follow. Either I would give him an example I would be proud of, or I'd give him an example I would be embarrassed by. That gave me purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I think that's part of it. Healing is defining purpose, understanding that I am not defined by my father's choices. I'm defined by my father's choices in terms of who he made me to be. So purpose, identity, and leaning into that, talking with other people was part of that healing process for me.
Yeah, I want to mention, because of course Jay and I are pretty close and very close, and in that process, as I have watched him, as he's been in
that's some tea, man.
and I have seen him heal. But it has been a process.
Yes.
I listened to Jay.
Listen, did you cuss that off?
Oh, I did.
He didn't say anything publicly.
Nah, listen, now I know you, because God knows. Ooh.
Yeah.
And in that of just being a listener, why he processes through. And I think that's real important. You listen and don't judge. You listen and don't assume. To know, are you a safe place to listen? And we've sat on my back porch while I was cooking a hamburger, and we were just in that space.
Right.
I don't even know how to say it, because I'm walking through the story with him, and the best thing you can do is be that emotional support for a man in his stature.
But what you're talking about, I think that's the foundation of the thing when you talk about, you said it was a space. So there was an environment that was conducive to healing, an environment that allowed healing to take place, because healing is release. And you don't heal what you see, you heal as you go.
Now, I want to say this, because this is amazing stuff. But I want to kind of throw this in there, because there are some men out there there are some men and some boys who have looked for that place, who have looked for the male role model.
Right.
And sometimes it takes a turn for the worse. And who they're looking to help them winds up hurting them.
Of course.
And winds up hurting them. And so, I'm saying this because the conversation, there is a group of men who are in our communities, our religious spaces, who become victims of other hurt men. And so, but in our defining of manhood, masculinity, to be in a space with other men is intimidating. It's frightening.
Absolutely.
And I'll never forget, I never would have thought that I would be talking to men. Ever. Like when I tell you never, ever. And I remember the first time I was asked to speak at a men's retreat. And I was married at the time, and I'm freaking out. I'm talking about, why are they asking me to preach, to speak at a men's event? And I'm like, what, for what? And married and all, I came to the realization, even though I was physically a man or a male, I never really identified as a man. I didn't identify as a man, not, in some weird way. I was never around a safe space where I could feel comfortable enough or safe enough to get the healing, the environment, the resources that I needed, the love, the affirmation, or the identity to say, hey, this is who you are. I never got that. And so I always felt more comfortable around women. And so I always felt more comfortable around women because I felt like they would not hurt me. And so there is a group of men who are longing for a father, who are longing for environments to where they can get the healing that they need, but they're afraid because maybe they were abused, maybe they were mentally abused, socially abused, sexually abused, even physically abused. And being around men makes them nervous. They don't feel safe. How can we speak to those men too?
Yeah, that's such a challenge. I think the first thing that I try to do, because I'm passionate about building men, matter of fact, it's obvious all of us are, is give people permission to recognize that where you are is okay. So,
Now you got to say it now.
Where you are is
now,
okay.
when you say that, I got to say this. We say that theoretically, but what does that look like? Because these are the same men who may identify in other alternative lifestyles. These are the men who may, and it's not because this is something that they chose, but it is something because of their trauma, because of life, because of lack of environment, right? They're on a struggle bus. So you said, except what you just, I don't want to.
I give permission that where you are is okay. In other words, being skeptical, being cautious, feeling intimidated, I need to first of all accept the fact that that's not being weak, that's where you are.
Yeah.
That I think is important. In my mind, it's important for that to be given as a, hey, it's okay. And that's how we roll with our men's ministry, right? Because we have all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah. These men ain't coming to men's ministry.
No,
I know, but
But I'm just saying, that's how we roll.
Yeah.
And so now you're talking about how you bridge into that, and I think that's powerful. And I don't have a full answer, but we're on the road to discovery.
I think that's the answer, is that it's okay to not have the complete answer. And I'll say this, I'll say this because when I think sometimes in faith communities, like in faith communities, man, we mess people over. We mess over people by trying to come up with formulas that are not biblical, that are not healthy, that are not even safe. And even though I'll give people the benefit of the doubt, in an attempt to do good, wind up doing more harm.
I was just gonna say, that's good. That's so good. The most powerful meeting that you can ever have, I call it the one-on-one. And I think even what you just said, how that space, if it was just you two in that space, I think that's the beginning of levels of intimacy for a man to feel open, emotionally vulnerable. And then once we have that one-on-one, then we can go to group settings. Then we can get a bit of confidence built up. But sometimes you need that one-on-one affirmation from a man. And I think it's a puzzle. Like you said, like there's no one answer, but I think it's a puzzle. And I think a part of that puzzle is like when a man and somebody that you view as a man, like this is a real man, and they give you a level of validation in a one-on-one. It's not public. It's just like, dude, you're gonna be okay.
I want to say this, is that I think as men, we have to make the commitment to be available to other men.
Yes.
Say that again. You gotta say that again.
We have to make the commitment to be available to other men. I've been doing this for over 40 years.
Come on.
Right? And One of the things that has shifted in me is that I say this: I don't need a stadium field. I need a table. I don't need 40,000 men. I need 3 brothers at the table that I'm willing to put my life into. And I think that that is the key as men. It has to be an organic process where I am making the commitment. I'm going to find somebody. I'm pouring my life into them, and I'm expecting them to do the same thing. Because if you don't have that trust, I didn't have it. I'm 64 years old. I've never called a man daddy in my life. And so I understand that, but I have individuals and I have friends that I have been able to be vulnerable with because there's an authenticity of relationship.
Yeah.
I think it starts there with my commitment to speaking into life one man at a time.
I like your question, though, and I want to try to massage over that a little bit more, because from our vantage point, especially from mine, what you're saying is that a person doesn't know me. He doesn't know a Jason Perry. He doesn't know what you've experienced now. Doesn't know what you've experienced, and they're really hesitant, intimidated to even. Where do I start? What do I? And that's why I said I think that the first thing is to communicate that it's okay that you're lost. As a man, it's okay to acknowledge the fact that I'm lost.
100%.
Because now I can start the journey of discovery. And there needs to be a space of men that acknowledge the fact that I've been lost and I'm finding my way.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think that that piece is just important, because I like what you're talking about is how do people bridge into that.
Yeah.
And I think I could talk to y'all all day. My gosh, I do. I think if I would take any nuggets from my own journey, I would say number one, definitely what you originally said. We have to begin the journey of excavation, right? Digging deep, but also where I am is okay, right? Where I am, I'm okay. And that's physically, that's mentally, that's emotionally, and that's spiritually. In every way, I'm okay. Maybe, and I think that's for every man. There is not one set model or mode or mannerism or body structure, and I think sometimes women are so much more accepting of each other, understanding that women come in all different shapes and sizes and whatnot. Men come in all different shapes, sizes, understandings, worldviews, and I think the process of really becoming a man is being committed to the journey of becoming. Is being committed. But listen, we could talk all day. Listen, I'm so excited that you all are journeying together. I'm glad that I don't have to journey by myself. I have amazing brothers like you who are walking with us, who are journeying with us. And I want to say thank y'all so much for joining us. And this is going to be dope. All right? All right, man. Love you guys. Listen, this conversation is so rich about the journey of becoming and discovering or excavating what it looks like to be a modern man, but not just a modern man, but a godly man in a post-godly society. Listen, I'm excited. These brothers have been dropping knowledge and word and experience, and there is some real tea in that series. I promise you. So listen, I want you to keep tuned, join in, like, subscribe, share. Go share it with one of your homies, your buddies, your friends, your men's group, because this is real talk. We are really discovering what it really looks like to believe like a man.